Welcome to the Economy Magazine. I'm Binyamin Tjong-Alvares with the news from the global economy. Coming up, 10 years following the tsunami, growth returns to some of the worst hit places, and Lebanon struggles with garbage. First, the headlines. Chinese stocks rebounded from the biggest two-day loss in 18 months on Thursday following news of corporate finance deregulation. China's State Council said it would make it easier for companies to offer shares, conduct mergers and acquisitions, and open branches overseas. Construction and bank shares were also boosted after the government pledged to support machinery exports to raise their international competitiveness. The Shanghai Composite Index surged 3.4% and the CSI 300 Index advanced 3.3%. Oil futures shrank on Wednesday and auto fuels closed at multi-year lows after data showed an unexpected surge in U.S. crude supplies. U.S. oil producers added 7.3 million barrels in the week ended December 19th, further weighing on prices that have declined nearly 50% since June. The unexpected addition comes in contrast to the typical drop at the end of the year. Light sweet crude for February delivery dropped 2.2% to $55.84 a barrel on the New York Mercantile Exchange. The February contract for Brent crude, the global benchmark, recently sank 2.5% to $60.24 a barrel on London's ICE Futures Exchange. Unemployment in France hit a new record in November as 3.488 million people claimed jobless benefits. Official statistics published on Wednesday showed a rise of 27,400 people on the jobless queue compared to the previous month. Reducing unemployment is one of President François Hollande's main pledges, but the number of jobless rose 0.8% from October and 5.8% from a year ago. France's economy only grew 0.3% in the third quarter, well below the 1.5% average needed to reduce unemployment. Paris is banking on lower oil prices and a weaker euro to breathe some life into its economy in 2015.
The fall in oil prices is favorable in the short term for the French economy because it redistributes purchasing power. We also expect the fall in the euro to continue, which is also favorable for exports of French companies, and the global economy to accelerate somewhat in 2015.
Israel's natural gas industry has been unsettled as the country's antitrust regulator might break an American-Israeli group's hold on the country's gas resources. The regulator is concerned Houston-based Noble Energy and its Israeli partners could overcharge for the gas, hurting consumers. Noble and its partners produce nearly all of Israel's gas from an offshore field called Tamal, used to generate about half of the country's electric power. The Noble-led group has reached preliminary deals to export substantial quantities of gas from the larger Leviathan field to Jordan and Egypt. 10 years following the disastrous tsunami that left death and destruction in its wake, the resilience of some families to succeed offers hope to the masses. Daniel Roth brings us the details.
10 years after the devastation of the December 26, 2004 tsunami, which killed more than 200,000, people are still trying to pick up the pieces. Salawati lives in the Indonesian province of Nangro Aceh Darussalam, the worst-hit area closest to the center of the earthquake that measured 9.6 on the Richter scale. Here she has built a successful business selling homemade shredded fish snacks, a regional favorite. It's clear the 10-meter-high wave's effect is still felt. Salawati lost 2 daughters in the tsunami while her husband and son survived.
Our feelings are not like 10 years ago when my chest felt tight while talking about the tsunami and what happened to our family. Now we have moved on, but it doesn't mean we have forgotten. The memory still exists, but for the future we want to keep moving on and expand our business so that we can support our only son's education and hope that his future goals be achieved.
Today they have a factory that can yield up to $500 net profit in a month on average, with 12 employees on the line pushing hundreds of kilograms of fish. The family had owned a shredded fish shop before the 2004 disaster and built this new business without the help of any startup capital, kickstarting the factory and then receiving a number of investment offers. They see this as a boon for the whole community.
We work to prioritize the people living here in the village of Merdouati. There are still many who live below the poverty line, so we want to help them earn a decent income and livelihood.
Since the disaster, this province has seen almost 150,000 homes built, as well as new infrastructure and tsunami warning sirens, in part thanks to billions of dollars of aid. Now, a decade after the disaster, these survivors and entrepreneurs hope to take their business overseas in the coming year.
With the 10-year anniversary of the devastating Indian Ocean tsunami, investors once again regard the Indian market as an exciting growth sector. Here to discuss more is Eran Peleg, Chief Investment Officer at Clarity Capital. Mr. Peleg, thanks for joining us.
Binyamin.
What is attracting investors back to the Indian market?
Well, the Indian stock market, equity market, has rallied significantly this year, up around 30%. This is while other emerging markets are struggling. Brazil, an example. Russia is a recent example. Other emerging markets, on average, are up only around 2% this year, and even developed markets are up maybe 8-9% on average. So
is this a recent trend, the surge in stock market?
It is a recent trend. I mean, recent years, India, if anything, was categorized as kind of a fragile five economy, one of those weak emerging markets that have, large current account deficits and large government deficits. Mm-hmm. The currency has depreciated by around 40% over 3 years, and its stock market underperformed. So definitely we're seeing a change this year.
And what explains the equity market's performance in 2014? It's performed quite well.
So yes, extraordinary well, and we've seen several key developments. First of all, back in September 2013, we've seen the appointment of Dr. Rajan as the central banker. This is a credible central banker. University of Chicago finance professor.
Boosting investor confidence, obviously.
Exactly. And also was chief economist at the IMF for several years. Second, we've started to see a stabilization in some of the key macroeconomic variables. Yeah. So, for example, the current account deficit, which I've mentioned previously, has really started to shrink from over 5% of GDP down to less than 2%. And finally, in May, we had general elections, and we've seen the BJP party, headed by Modi, gaining a landslide victory. And this is a party that has really promised to deliver a much more pro-growth, pro-business reform agenda, which the market really was looking for.
So do you see this outperformance continuing into 2015?
We think it's very possible. First of all, at the moment, we're seeing investment flows into India because it is seen as one of the kind of preferred emerging markets to be involved in. But second of all, the macro environment remains stable. Which is a positive, and even more so now with the drop in the oil price, right. With India being a net importer of oil, it's helping both growth and right. Inflation to moderate. And even before that, we've started to see inflation moderate, which is could lead to us starting to see interest rate cuts in India, which is a positive for financial assets.
It sounds to me, from what you've said, that a lot of the outside factors weigh a lot more so than, say, the domestic factors within India itself. I mean, the fact that Russia, is not doing so well, China's slowing down, the oil prices are down. I mean, all of these factors really have a great positive impact on the Indian economy, correct?
So it is part of the story is that India maybe looks good relative to other markets or other, especially emerging economies, no doubt about that. Right. But I think that in itself, I mean, we are seeing a lot of the developments are positive internally. We still have to see that the government can deliver on its promises, which is probably one of the largest risk for investors in the Indian market, because at this point in time, as opposed to back, 1 or 2 years ago when people were very pessimistic about India, now optimism has grown, and therefore equity prices are higher, expectations are much higher, and if the government disappoints, investors could be disappointed as well.
Of course. Well, Eran Peleg, Chief Investment Officer at Clarity Capital, thanks for joining us on the show.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. A towering mountain of trash has long marred Lebanon's southern city of Sidon, but recent efforts to clean the dump may inspire the rest of the country, home to more than 650 garbage dumps, to follow suit. Here's more.
A towering mountain of trash was for decades a modern landmark in Lebanon's ancient port, Sidon. In a city better known for its Crusader castle and ancient market, The 58-meter or 190-foot eyesore was a nuisance to residents since it first arose in the 1980s.
In the summer, the smell was terrible. The mountain used to catch fire and its smell would suffocate the whole city.
The site started as a dump during the country's civil war, and most of the material came from destroyed buildings. Over the years, rubbish washed out to sea as far as Cyprus. Mayor Mohammed El Saudi came to power in the city of 200,000, pledging to deal with the dump.
There's no more trash now on the mountain, and we're moving towards finishing the work by planting the top of the mountain with grass. We're also working on the backfill for the public garden, and we've brought the trees and the plants.
An ambitious project is underway with the installation of a seawall around the site and the coastline to the south, preventing waves from impeding work. 33,000 square meters of the land is set to open as a public park, planted with 100-year-old olive trees and featuring a small amphitheater. The rest of the dump was thrown into a sanitary landfill, lined and covered with plastic. But not everyone is impressed.
They built this breakwater about a kilometer or a kilometer and a half long, and they claim this will prevent the garbage from reaching the sea, which will. But what they did, we lost the beaches. We lost half of the city beaches forever.
Despite the critics, officials maintain the project will be an inspiration for the rest of the country. Though it's smaller than Wales, Lebanon has more than 650 rubbish dumps of varying sizes.
And we're joined now by ITV News reporter Daniel Roth for a look at both the noteworthy and the offbeat stories from the world press in Media Watch. Daniel, thanks for joining us.
How's it going?
Good.
It's new and noteworthy.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. So take us to Bloomberg, I guess. Yeah?
Yes, Michael Bloomberg, former New York City mayor, has been trying to keep his influence on municipal levels around the world now. He had a round a couple of years ago of grants, these innovation grants, sending consultants to city governments to help them innovate the way he did in New York, or at least he likes to remember himself as doing in New York. So this happened in a few cities like Memphis and Chicago and a number of other cities in the U.S. First round. Second round, 12 more U.S. cities, 2 Israeli cities, Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. They're going to get, these cities get, it's a $45 million expansion to the program. It's 14 new cities. It's a big deal. It's sending people to city governments essentially to think ahead about what are the problems that cities need to face.
Right.
And Michael Bloomberg, being a former 12-year mayor of New York City, fancies himself an expert. And in a lot of ways he is. He did a lot of good. People agree. Bike lanes, banning smoking in almost every place you can think of.
Healthier and friendlier.
Yeah, a lot of park rejuvenation. A lot of things were really great. At the same time, he presided over 12 straight budget contractions, closing down budgets, particularly in education, sending teachers home, a lot of money being siphoned out of the public sphere in favor of privatizing things like education. Again, presided over stop and frisk, which is this famously unconstitutional and openly racist form of policing in New York City. A number of sort of controversial things. So one of the questions that this program begs of you is, what are these innovative consultants coming to innovate? What we can see examples of 3 terms of Bloomberg in New York doing some really interesting stuff and doing some stuff that most citizens of New York, I lived in New York for a number of years under Bloomberg, most people across the political spectrum appreciated a lot of the stuff and really, really thought a lot of the stuff was terrible. There was, the cream of the crop sort of looked to the privatization as the way to go for New York, but the vast majority of New Yorkers thought, closing down public education in the city or sort of the trend towards that was problematic.
Gotcha. It'll be interesting to see if he makes it to Detroit
Absolutely. That's the real battle there.
So see, what's the next story here?
City Lab has this piece. Paris is doing this interesting thing. It's kind of a city's media watch. Paris is trying out a new thing where in these pinpointed addresses, 257 specific addresses, they're going to force landlords to, first of all, offer to the city if they plan to sell. This is meant to make sure that there's not ghettoization.
Okay, well, Daniel Roth, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
That's the end of our Economy Magazine, your daily source for economic news. I'm Binyamin Tjong-Alvares. Thanks for joining us, and join us again tomorrow.